They spotted her the moment she stepped off the bus. New backpack, braided hair tucked under a beanie. Eyes that took everything in like she was cataloging the world. The whispers started low and then rose, folding into the hum of the courtyard. New kids always made a sound here. Some were curiosity, some were knives. She didn't look like a threat. She looked like someone who had learned to keep her head down. Where'd she come from? Someone muttered. New girl, another replied. Black girl. Probably thinks she's better than us. It was the sort of line that hooked into the air and let poison drip slowly. The usual cluster parted and a couple of the regulars sauntered over, the ones who liked attention and sized people up like they were choosing sneakers. The leader had a swagger that said he'd never been pushed, never been corrected, never had to answer for himself. He liked making people small. Watch this, he said, more to his friends than to her. He put his hand up like a referee, like a circus performer about to draw a coin from a kid's ear. Hey, new girl, he called, loud enough to pull other eyes. You lost, or you just looking for trouble? She looked at him. For a second, he saw only a steady pair of brown eyes. No flinch. No, please don't. Just the quiet, disarming thing that made most people try again. Name's Marcus, he said, like she needed to know. We do things around here. You gonna play nice, or? Before she could answer, he stepped forward and tried to knee her in the face. A cheap, show-off move meant to humiliate and get laughs. A quick, cocky strike. The kind kids freeze from and teachers scold from a distance. The courtyard went still, like someone had pressed pause. Tom did this funny thing. It stretched like elastic and then snapped back. She moved like someone who had already seen the move 1,000 times and knew its setup. Not in panic, not in fear, with the automaticness of muscle memory. Her foot shifted, her hip turned, and she didn't just avoid the knee. She closed the distance, tapped his knee with the inside of her forearm, and used his momentum to guide him forward. He fell, hard enough to eat up the smirk he'd practiced on his face, and the entire courtyard exhaled as one collective sound that had been waiting for drama. It wasn't violent. It wasn't a show. It was efficient. It was contained. But it told a story louder than any words. This girl knew how to move. Marcus's friends circled like buzzing flies, angry and embarrassed. You heard him, one of them yelped, playing the victim. You punched him. No, she said. Her voice was flat. She extended her hand, not in peace, but to help him up without making a spectacle. I didn't want to. He grabbed her wrist like a snake. You think you're tough? There was a line under the words. What followed the line was old. The jokes about how she looked, how she dressed, the slurs that fit like rusted nails. It spilled out because once people get a taste of power they never learned how to earn, they gorge on it. Marcus shoved her. That was the signal. His friends laughed, and laughter is a crowd's way of saying, do more. She didn't meet their laughter with fire. She met it with a calm that smelled of other rooms. Hot air, sweat, the echo of coaches' voices. You don't rise to your own noise. You answer only what is necessary. You're looking for something, she said. I'm not it. Marcus smiled like a child who'd found a new toy. You gonna walk away, pretty girl? Or you gonna weep? The word pretty was a weapon. It was meant to belittle. The courtyard shifted, sensing a fight. Phones came out. Someone always wants to film the fall of the new kid. But the biggest mistake wasn't what Marcus did. It was what he expected her to feel. She stepped forward. The next movement came from a place beyond a high school quarrel. It moved with a grace that belonged to a different time and place. Dawn and dusk, the clink of gloves in a gym that smelled like liniment and determination. Her hands were up not in anger, but in measured readiness. She didn't swing. She didn't scream. She adjusted a stance Marcus didn't even know how to name. Muay Thai wasn't flash. It was language. She spoke in low kicks and elbows and angles. She used a small, precise strike to the soft part of his upper thigh that halted a charge. A knee to the rib that reminded him breathing was something he should practice more humbly. And most devastating, a shove that sent him stumbling into his own friends, the kind of shove that returns pride for what it is, fragile and breakable. The courtyard watched in that special, stupid silence heavy with disbelief. Phones lowered. The crowd's cheers were swallowed under a new sound, respect. Not for the fight, but for the refusal to be the kind of person you became when you let fear loose. Marcus looked up at her from the ground, and for the first time the bravado washed out of his face and left something smaller, something like regret. You could have killed him, someone whispered, half accusatory, half awed. He could have eaten it, she said. Or he could have learned. That's on him. When the bell finally rang like a gavel, teachers poured out, and the courtyard disbanded like card houses. Marcus rubbed his sore ribs and swagger was back on his shoulders, less sincere. But the world had shifted a fraction. New girl had a name on her badge now. Ava. She walked away like she always had. Forward, not rushed, the kind of step that showed she'd done hard things and hadn't been ruined by them. If the fight had been only muscle, the story ends there. But the story wasn't. Weeks passed, and the rumor spread. Not the twisty gossip that chewed at people, but the quiet rumor that told what she'd been before. Not just a high schooler, but a world Muay Thai champion. A title heavy with discipline and travel and a lot of nights sleeping on gym mats. She'd started training when she was small because her mother wanted her to be safe. She'd trained because she liked the silent math of it. Angles, timing, breathing. She'd trained because somewhere between the punches and the counting she found a place that made her whole. With that title came expectations, and with expectations came people trying to push and profit from it. Show circuits, fights, weight classes, all the noise of the sport. But she was a kid with more than one life. Textbooks, homework, a mother who worked double shifts, a scholarship application glowing like a future promise. Training had grounded her, but she didn't want the world to label her by it alone. So when the counselor called her into his office one afternoon and asked what happened, she told the truth in the same, even way she'd answered everything else. Marcus had started the trouble, and nobody had intended on things going as far as they did. The school had a code. The code mattered. But so did the context of why she moved the way she did. He has to learn, she said. This isn't about me being the best at something. It's about him seeing that people don't have to be small for you to be big. They put him on detention and a restorative session with the school's conflict mediator. It wasn't enough for some. Some wanted suspension, press, a lesson. Others wanted to protect their own. To say this was a kid, he'll learn. The middle ground is where life usually sits. Messy and only partially fair. Marcus came to the restorative meeting looking like a boy who'd swapped an oversized crown for a too tight shirt. He'd rehearsed an apology into his pocket and brought it out in fragments. He said he was sorry. He said he didn't mean to make her feel threatened. He said a lot of things he'd heard others say. But the magic of those meetings wasn't an apology. It was the chance to speak truth into the room and for someone to listen. "Why'd you try to hit her?" the mediator asked. Marcus said, "She looked different." The room exhaled. The truth landed like a hammer. Different, he meant. She didn't act how he expected. Ava laughed once, a small, mirthless thing. Different's not a reason. It's a fact. You could have asked me what I like. You could have asked my name. You chose to be mean. He shifted. He looked at his hands, and then at hers, and then at the floor. The meeting did what it could do, made the uncomfortable parts necessary. Marcus agreed to apologize properly, to do community service in the gym where Ava sometimes trained, to write an essay about why people become bullies and how to stop. He didn't have to become a saint. He had to become someone who could look back without feeling proud. There was a small victory in that. Not the sort flagged by headlines, but the ones that matter later when you're older and your life is a mosaic of decisions. A boy learning not to strike. A girl learning that power doesn't always mean punishing. But the world kept turning, and news like a single bell told travels. Ava's past in the ring made her the target for other kinds of attention. Kids who thought the champion title meant an easy ticket to attention, to fights outside school, to tag videos and challenges that sometimes spill over into real harm. She handled it the way she always did, with boundaries. If it was a call for a match at a far-off alley, she'd say no. If it was a dare, she'd deflect. People wanted spectacle, not her boundaries. One evening, a week before the big regional meet, she found Marcus waiting near the gym. He was awkward, fingers fidgeting like he wanted to be a cat and not a boy. He had a change of clothes and a backpack, and he looked like someone who practiced hard enough to sweat through the day. "You coming to train?" she asked, not sure why her voice felt threadbare. "I asked my mom," he said. "She said it's better than being out. Coach said I could clean up the mats." I wanted to say, "Thanks for not breaking me that day." She shrugged. "You didn't deserve to get broken." They trained in silence at first. He swept a mat the way someone sweeps guilt into corners, back and forth until it looked clean. Then he ran drills, the first clumsy, then better. He learned how to keep his hands up, how to pivot, the small economy of movement. Months later, The school announced a showcase, an event for kids in the community to try martial arts in a safe, judged environment. Marcus signed up. Ava coached him. There was applause, awkwardness, redemption stitched into something neither expected to wear. He didn't win. He learned balance. The real change wasn't in trophies. It was in him sitting with someone he once tried to hurt and having her stand steady. It was in the way he apologized later, not because he had to, but because he wanted to be a better kind of man. As for Ava, the title of World Muay Thai Champion stayed with her like a badge she kept in a drawer. She still trained. She still traveled and fought with a disciplined ferocity that was more poem than violence. But the championship was no longer something she hid. It was a tool. She used it to help younger kids find rhythm. She used it when she taught self-defense at the community center, the same center that had once sheltered her on nights when her mother worked late. She used it to insist on safety for those who had no voice. And when people asked how a new girl managed to turn a bully's knee into a life lesson, she only shrugged. Punching is easy, she said. Holding yourself together is hard. Sometimes the best fights are the ones that start in a courtyard and end in a gym where two people sweep the same mat. One learning, one teaching. Sometimes the best revenge is not revenge at all, but a life so full and honest that the people who tried to make you small need to grow up to fit into your world. The last scene is not a dramatic knockout. It's quieter, a summer afternoon, Ava teaching a small group of kids how to stand and breathe. Marcus is there, older by the calendar, learning the whirs and clicks of movement. He trips over his feet, laughter bubbles up, and Ava reaches out, steadying him with the same hand she once offered to help him up after his fall. "Keep your guard," she says, smiling. He nods. "I will." And the camera that never was, the memory the town keeps, the thing that gets told on buses and in houses. It becomes not the story of a bruise, but the story of someone who refused to let fear call the shots, and someone else who, eventually, decided not to be a bully anymore.